The Star. It is super late night, so there might be some fumbly bumbly going on through this thing, but we got to push on through. I'm trying to get past this whole Aries never falling through with stuff kind of thing. All right, so before we get into this path, I want to read something that William Buellman put on his Facebook page. William Buellman, one of the best out of body experience coaches on the planet, has been doing it for a long time. And he said a couple of days ago, he put this on his profile page, because of the increasing propaganda, divisions, and all of the fear mongering, the war mongering, all of this occurring in the physical world today, he felt that he needed to say this. He said, "I've worn my human costume for over 73 years, and for the first 20 years, I was trained to try to fit in. I was trained to assimilate into human society and culture. I was taught to fit in, follow the rules, don't be weird. And after my first out-of-body experience in the early 1970s, I became an active inner explorer of my immortal, non-physical self. And that's when I realized that most, if not all, of the beliefs that I had accepted from birth were seriously flawed or completely false. Now, once you experience the core, non-physical reality of your existence, you are no longer the compliant pawn of the belief systems that divide us by politics, religion, race, gender, or national origin. You become aware of the daily mass media propaganda of fear and division. You see the mass manipulation of the collective consciousness and the blind always leading the blind. It takes courage to question everything you've been taught and accepted your entire life. It takes courage to explore beyond the dense physical facade and seek the answers for yourself. When you experience your immortal self, you awaken to the reality that you are not a physical, bipedal human animal, and that's when you begin an exciting lifetime journey of awakening. Discover the answers for yourself and do not settle for less." William Buellman, astralinfo.org. Now, I figured that was a good quote to start this this talk about the star card, because let's take a look at the Monroe brain. So when it comes to getting in contact with our higher self, we got a lot going on here up in that head, don't we? So on one side of the brain, on the left side, we've got analytic thought, logic, language, reasoning, science, and math, written skills, number skills, right-hand control, logic. I think I said that already. You know, that side. And then on the other side, we have the right brain functions of art and awareness, creativity, imagination, intuition, insight, holistic thought, music awareness, those lovely emotions, 3D forms too, and left-hand control. Now, remember that on the Tree of Life, we've been taking these, or discussing these paths that the tarot corresponds with. Initiation from the earth, up, rising up the tree in this philosophical system. The first one we did was this path right here. I'm going to use arrows. That's better. The universe or the world card. The second one, we just jumped right over here on this side and we went judgment. Then the sun. Then the moon. Right? Now we're doing this path, the star. But remember all of the different systems in here. Like the human eyeball, this system has a set of triangles that are reflected until it gets into Earth. And remember, when we see things, do I have triangles on here? I think I do. So, I mean, if we really want to look at ultimate reality, I guess we could say ultimate reality. I can never do these triangles right. Ultimate reality would be the source in this system. And then it reflects upon itself. Gosh, what an ugly triangle. It reflects upon itself 2 more times. Like that, but, you know, it's better than that. So think about that. That means there's an illusory thing going on to begin with, right? And then that's one system, studying the triangles on the tree. And you can go into that for days. But then there's another one. There's the pillars. So you've got the pillar of severity, the pillar of mercy, kind of fat pillars or whatever. And then you got the middle pillar, the mystical path of devotion. And through that middle pillar, you see the earth, which represents us, the physical world. Up to the purple one, then you see the moon or Yesod, which is our unconscious, that crazy collective unconscious world, and entering the astral world. And then breaking through that barrier, you get to the higher self, or the sun, or Tiferet, where the yellow one is. And then even beyond that, we could call that God, source, or whatever, after we get across the abyss. But my whole point is looking at the Monroe brain, we kind of see the same thing. And everything happens fractally, doesn't it? So, from philosophy and spirituality and those energies that reside in there, all the way down to the physical world of the earth, everything happens fractally. So here on the tree, after we've studied all the initial paths, we know that, okay, well, I've figured out that this side is the intellect. We figured that out together. And this side is the emotions while we're going through all these paths down here. So if we know how these spheres emanate, they do in the lightning flash, but they also emanate straight down. So you could call this side the right brain side, a side that comes from first up here at the top of wisdom, mercy, and then beauty and emotions, right? And then same thing over here, understanding. That means formulas. I understand, right? Severity, the intellect. So, how do we, so in order to tap into our higher self in a balanced way, we have to do both, right? So this is why this is tough for some, because people that are super, let's just say, analytical on this side don't have too many problems understanding these paths, traveling this path as much as they would the other path over here on the right. So when we get to the path of the star, right here, we are beginning to accept the messages of the higher self, or we're learning to accept them. In my experience, that's what this is. We're learning to start tapping into that side of our minds, that side of our being, that side of our intuition. And I got to tell you, the more that approval machine that you're trying to appease, and the more of that comparison that you do to others and yourself, the more this path is going to kick your ass. Because there is no one like you on the earth. Nobody. You are not supposed to relate to anybody perfectly. It's not supposed to be that way. And once you realize you're an immortal, spiritual, unique being that's trying to individualize into this spirit, whatever we call it, spirit, because that's what we understand it to be. But once you realize that's what's going on, then you surrender to the process. And I think, I don't talk about OBEs a lot when I talk about tarot and stuff, but I think what William Buellman said is perfect. Once you actually have that experience of that inner world, beyond any doubt that you have, all of the comparisons, the approval, even the being practical as much as possible, and all this stuff kind of doesn't weigh as heavy. Now, we got to keep a good balance. Remember that. We don't want the pendulum to swing, but it doesn't weigh on you the way it used to. And then you can begin to surrender to your true self. That's what this process is all about. Purifying the old self, surrendering to the true self. And by the way, like Mary said on the show the other night, you were just fine when you got here. It wasn't until you started asking questions and trying to get guidance from all of the other people on this planet that were just as lost as you are when they got here. All of them. Doesn't matter who they are. That's what kept you from that higher self. Everything is balance. They also kept you alive too, didn't they? And they loved you. All right. So let's get into the star. Let's get into some deep. This is gonna be fumbly bumbly, and it's gonna be a little complicated, just like we all are. So the star, the daughter of the firmament. Actually, I think we should. Let's start with Wang's stuff here. You're gonna see where people disagree too on things now. The path of Zadi, the star, the 28th path, the 17th key on the tarot. The path color is violet. The related sound is A sharp. The sign is fixed air of Aquarius. Its deeper esoteric meaning is the fish hook. Its simple letter meaning is imagination. The simple letter of Zadi. And its esoteric title is the daughter of the firmament, the dweller between the waters. And on the 32 paths of wisdom and that old school Western philosophy that corresponds with this tree, the 28th path is called the natural intelligence. And it's called that because through this natural intelligence, everything is consummated and perfected by nature. Right? So through it, it is consummated and perfected the nature of every existing thing beneath the sun. So anytime you hear everything under the sun, or that phrase under the sun, that means under Tifereth, esoterically. So the path of Zadi, the star, connects that green sphere of Netzach, victory, with Yesod, that purple sphere, the foundation. It's a very powerful path, which points out the way in which the divine energy that's inside and inherent in each one of us begins to be properly approached. The letter Zadi means fishhook, implying meditation. What? How the hell does fishhook imply meditation? Well, it does. A process closely linked with the use of imagination. In these terms, meditation is described as, well, not as taking out of something, but as putting in or merging of two streams of individual consciousness with the greater consciousness. And while this is a path of intuition, especially primal intuition, the vessels in the card represent a separation and then reintegration of the Chokma force, feelings and intuition at this level, and the Bina force of intellect. So it's the separation of those two things we just showed you on the tree, and then the reintegration of them. The symbolism of the fish hook in meditation is easily extended to the tree of life. The hook, Zadi, the star, is put into the waters of Mem, or the hanged man, to catch the fish, Noon, the death card. We'll get into that later. But water is, again, a symbol of consciousness. Remember that when you see water in these cards. It can be a symbol of the collective consciousness, also a symbol of deep emotions, too. So as we experiment with meditation and imaginative visualizations, casting ourselves into the universe of the universal sea, we seek an understanding of the very processes of life and death. So on the 32 path of wisdom describes this path as the natural intelligence, which suggests the raw forces of nature attributed to Netzach, that green sphere. And if you study the philosophic system of the Hermetic Kabbalah, this green sphere that we're talking about, the path is right here between Yesod, but the green sphere is what we're talking about right now. Netzach right here. We know some things about that. This is where some of the Elohim are too. Okay. So as we experiment with the meditation and imaginative visualization, when we cast ourselves into this universal sea, we are seeking an understanding of the very processes of life and death. So the Elohim, the raw forces of nature attributed to Netzach, the Elohim, the gods of Netzach, are synonymous with nature itself. This natural intelligence is related to the energy symbolized in another card too. This is, as we go up the tree, we're going to start to see how all these cards play upon each other. So strength, that card, it's also, these energies are also symbolized in that card. More on that later. So the number of the star is actually 17. And if you get into gematria, that reduces to the number 8, which is the strength card. That card represents the conscious control of Kundalini energy, variously described as solar or sexual energy. Now, we recall that the serpent Kundalini, the same which tempts Eve on the tree of knowledge of good and evil in that story, is said to be coiled in Yesod. Really? So, although when it is shown on the tree of life, it touches each and every path. And let me just show you that glyph so you can get a. So it is said, this serpent is said to be coiled. Think about that. In Yesod. Where's my circle? There's Yesod right there. Now, where does Yesod correspond to the physical body? Well, it corresponds to the physical body, our generative or sexual energies, the sexual forces. And that is where the energy is coiled and kept. We're going to be unveiling all different sides of the mysteries here, but I don't want to get too far off because we got a lot to cover here. So we recall that the serpent Kundalini, the same which tempts Eve on the tree of knowledge of good and evil, is said to be coiled in Yesod, although it does touch all the paths on the tree. And as we encounter the Kundalini force, the sexual energies in ourselves, we approach the greater mysteries of Tifereth, the solar logos, which is the central star of our existence. So I'm sure all of you know where Tifereth is now, I'm hoping. But it's right here, the central star of our existence. I remember Christ called himself the true bright morning star. Might be the rising sun. Some people think it's Venus. More on that later. Okay. The solar logos is the central star of our existence and our consciousness. The process of approach is a kind of yoga involving the innervation of these centers of energy. It is this energy which we use in the meditation process. It is both the means and the goal of enlightenment. For as the text states of Zadi, through it, it is consummated and perfected the nature of every existing thing beneath the sun. The star is the means of perfection. It is the method. And as Paul Foster Kay states of this method, meditation, when we meditate, is really a function of the ego, which raises to the conscious level the powers of the automatic consciousness of Yesod. So what is Paul Foster Case is saying? The ego, or the highest point of the ego, resides right here in the sun. And our consciousness is getting raised. We're getting raised up from this sphere of Yesod. That thing that's blocking us, so to speak, the unconscious. So, that might seem at first that meditation could be personal. When we really succeed in meditation, we discover that what happens is not that we are meditating actively. Oh, look, I'm meditating, look at me. But rather that we are meditated. Not that we are meditating, but we are meditated. We've surrendered. The idea is that the higher self, which Paul Foster Case here is calling the ego or Tifereth, brings the personality into meditation. The fish hook is partially the search of the personality consciousness for reality in the context of meditation, but it is also the angling of the higher self to pull the personality up from its depths of self-enclosure. So what is our higher self trying to do to us the whole time? Which is why we have a lot of crazy shit while we're battling. So this is what's happening, okay? So while we're down here on the earth doing our approval machines, comparing ourselves to everything and everybody and being controlled by propaganda and bullshit and blind leading the blind, the fisherman of the higher self is trying to pull us up out of the waters, so to speak. So he's fishing down here for us, and he's trying to pull us up through the waters into the higher self. Always. This is what your higher self is doing always. So when you're struggling and you're not on your path, or you don't synchronicity stop and all this other stuff, You have stopped listening to that thing, and you've went back to the comparison machine, back to fear, you're back in that place again. Whatever it is, you've forgot to listen. So we got to get back into meditation, back into ceremony, back into whatever we do to get closer, so that it can keep pulling us into the higher self. Meditation's a good practice, though. So I think that's a beautiful way of stating the fish hook, right? The fish hook is partially the search of the personality consciousness for reality in the context of meditation, but it is also the angling of the higher self to pull the personality from its depths of self-enclosure. So we are actually seeking while it's pulling. And if there's a balance there too, right? Funny. So let's go back to the cards. I don't know why they covered up. That's crazy. But there's the Rider-Waite card. Okay. So the figure on, are we looking at, which card do we need to look at first? The figure on this card is the most pure manifestation of the Great Mother at the level of the personality. So remember, we're still kind of down towards the bottom of the tree, and prior to its enclosure in matter. So for this reason, it's completely unveiled. It is the perfection of the physical form of nature. Every existing thing under the sun, meaning below the level of Tiferet. This is the same figure first found in the Empress, where she's robed and crowned. It is the same figure as the High Priestess. It is the same figure found in the universe. It's the same higher self figure, the same person. So in the Golden Dawn card, let's pull up Wang's blurry Golden Dawn card because I can't find a decent one to pull off the internet. In the Golden Dawn card, the woman is shown pouring the contents of both urns of Chokmah and Bina into the earth so that they unite and form a river at her feet. In the Waite card, let's go back to that one. Waite card. I need someone I can yell at to change slides here. In the Waite card, the urns are pouring their substances onto the earth and water. Crowley's symbolism, Crowley's card, always changes the game. He likes to change stuff, right? So Crowley's symbolism is far more complicated. So he represents two breast-like cups, one gold and one silver. From the golden cup, she pours this ethereal water, which is also milk and oil and blood, upon her own head, indicating the eternal renewal of the categories, the inexhaustible possibilities of existence. The left hand, lowered, holds a silver cup, from which also she pours the immortal liquor of her life. She pours it upon the junction of land and water. Now this water is the water of the great sea of Bina. In the manifestation of Nuit on a lower plane, she is the Great Mother. Remember that. We talked about Bina and that Saturnian energy that is the mother kind of energy, the high mother-female energy creating and destroying things, right? The kind of I guess you could say the mother creator. And then down here when we get towards the earth, it's more Virgo-y and more princessy. So, Crowley describes the repeated spirals on this card that you can see on there as a reference to the shapes of the universe. So if you notice, he's up here, he's got spirals. Things are spirally at the top. Okay. And I lost my spot. Oh, there we go. So, Crowley describes these repeated spirals on this card as a reference to the shape of the universe as calculated by Einstein and his followers. He points out that only in the lower cup are these rectangular forms and says that in this may be discovered the doctrine which asserts that the blindness of humanity to all the beauty and wonder of the universe is due to the illusion of straight lines. Where have we heard that before? Terrence Howard. There are no straight lines. The Golden Dawn representation of the star carries more specific information about this path than the others. although it is hidden in the intricacies of number. There's the Golden Dawn card. So, on this card, the 7 primary rays of the star and the 14 secondary rays add up to 21. This is the number of Acheye, the god name of Kether, telling us that the relationship of this path to the Godhead is far more direct than is obvious on the surface. Moreover, the Golden Dawn imagery carries with it an explanation of why the star, transposed with the Emperor by Crowley, belongs firmly planted on the 28th path where tradition has placed it. So this is where they all get in a tizzy because Crowley he switched those 2 cards and their paths and what they represent, and Robert Wang does not agree with that. The key to all of this is the 2 trees on either side of the female figure. These are the trees of life on the right and the tree of knowledge of good and evil on the left. Biblical scholars will immediately recognize the symbolic trees described in Genesis. Adam and Eve were forbidden the fruit of the latter tree, though not of the former. The bird of Hermes above the tree of knowledge of good and evil, the ibis, amplifies the meaning of the tree in this card. It's a reference to the magician, actually, the card of Hermes Thoth Mercury. In Hebrew, the word kokab means star, but more specifically, it means Mercury. So we understand that it is necessary to apply the willpower of the magician, the directing force in meditation, if we are to learn the lessons of this path. So the Zohar, the Hebrew text, speaking of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, explains that if a man lives upright, it is a tree of good, but if he lives unjustly, it is a tree of evil. Now, this isn't saying that we're accepting any social doctrines or law or any rule of social conduct. It just means simply that functioning in accordance with the universal will is upright. And here in the card, we see that the lower branches of this tree are a reversal of the principles symbolized by the branches above. Each branch represents one of the 7 planets, 6 around the sun, with Saturn representing all 3 supernals. Does it now? Now you see what he's talking about here? It's like he hit it, but now he's explaining it. So you see these branches on this tree over here? 1, 2, 3, 4. Like those. You got 7 there, right? I'll show you. Hold on. Let me see if I can. There it is. The tree of good of. That's what he's representing there. So we understand that this tree, related to the expulsion of Adam and Eve from the condition of heavenly bliss, symbolizes the dualities of good and evil, pain and pleasure, harmony and disunities of the human condition. The bird above, while a reference to the magician, the bird above that tree, while is a reference to the magician and the will, points out that wisdom emerges from a right understanding and control of the daily aspects of our lives. The Hermetic mysteries serve to explain all that is called good or evil in our lives and to help us to transcend those limitations which are imposed by those qualities. It will also be seen that the tree of knowledge of good and evil is towards the side of the pillar of severity. It's opposite. The tree of life is on the side of the pillar of mercy. For it is a gift of God balancing the severely polar lessons of the other tree. So the very practical point implied here is that we must continually refer the lessons of our inner worlds, like William Buhlman says, the results of our meditations to our daily lives, and vice versa. We have to do both. So what is shown in this key is the Garden of Eden, a state of beginnings. But a complicated question arises to why that garden should be represented in a card so freaking low on the tree of life, and indeed why it should form one of the primary paths of the personality, because we're still initiating the personality down here at the bottom of the tree. So why is all of this really big ideas down here on this side of the tree? All right, why? Well, it's more like right there. Why should it form one of the primary paths of the personality? So this is explained by a reference of this path to a higher path, that of the emperor. We'll get into that later. The correct Hebrew title of this card is Ha Kokabim, meaning the stars rather than just the star. Now, Paul Foster Case made this point, noting that some early French and Italian decks used the plural, the stars, or les étoiles and les stelles, for this reason. And while Case didn't explain the idea, a lot of admirers of Crowley will immediately recall the statement from his book of the law, causing him to reverse the emperor and the star. And he says in that book that Zadi is not the star. And indeed, Wang goes on to say, it is not a single star, nor is it the emperor. Yet there are many Kabbalistic ways in which the emperor and the star, or He and Zadi, correspond. One such link, again demonstrated by the master of gematria, Paul Foster Case, has to do with the fact that the Hebrew Ha Kokabim has the same numerical value as Eben Ha Adam, or the stone of Adam. And I don't need to get into the Hebrew and show you those letters and break it all down and all that stuff. Just know that they have the same values. So, Ha Kokabim, the star, and the stone of Adam, or Eben Ha-Adam, have the same numerical value. Now, this is a symbolic reference to the union of the supernal father Chokmah with the son Tifereth. The path of the emperor. Let me show you where that actually is on the tree. There, it's the path of the emperor. Okay. The path of the emperor, that's what it's showing. So Netzach is the Chokmah energy at its lowest arc. Remember that. Netzach is this Chokmah energy right here at its lowest arc. I told you it was going to get kind of mubbly. So it's Elohim, the Elohim of Netzach. Its Elohim are the lower expressions of that Yod He Vav He Elohim of Bina, which the book, so remember, up here the gods in Bina are YHVH Elohim. These are the lower expressions of those Elohim. This is so much easier to understand when you study every separate system instead of trying to do it all at once, but just keep watching the videos. It'll all start making sense. So, so these Elohim and Netzach and the green sphere are the lower expressions of the Elohim of Bina, okay, which the book of Genesis tells us created the garden and the two trees. The path of the star is thus the lower Eden, the Eden of the personality. The path of the emperor is, as will later be talked about, the fiery aspect of an upper Eden, the Eden from which the higher self emerges. So we're learning about the different phases of the tree, the personality, the Christ self, the higher self, the God self. The star shows Eden, restored by Adam, a reference to Tifereth, to which Adam is attributed. This lower Eden is a state to which the personality can directly relate. I hate this fuzzy card. Damn it. I'm sorry, y'all. It's fuzzy. All right. So this lower Eden is a state to which the personality can actually relate to. So here, too, we recall that the creation of man, the formation of the individual consciousness from the collective unconscious, begins from the point of Netzach. It is also the highest level of the personality's intuition, as opposed to the path of the sun, which is the highest level to be reached by the intellect. Got that? Back to the tree. Let's erase all this. So this path, remember, our personality starts down here in our animal self as we grow in consciousness to our higher self. Okay. Now, so this path is on the side of emotions and our intuition. It is the highest point of the personality self that starts to I guess you could say, have a handshake with the higher self. And on the intuitive side, like this path of the sun is the highest point of the intellectual self with the personality, where the higher self and the lower personality begin to have a handshake. The Aries sign of Aquarius associated with this card is also, we know Aquarius to be associated with peace, love, and inspiration. That's why it's given to this path. In the ancient world, Saturn was said to govern Aquarius, which refers us back again to Bina, and in fact, to the universe. So here it should be clear that the star relates to a whole bunch of paths, more paths than most other keys. As such, is of very special importance. Crowley stated that the reason of this is better than other, Crowley, according to Wang, states this better than others. He said that here the universe is resolved into its ultimate elements. The resolution is implicit in the very figure of the central star itself, which is a merging of many lights. It is a shining forth. I got to go back to Wang's card. He's been he loves his star card, and I like the Wang star card too. If it was more clear, but this resolution is implicit in the very figure of the central star itself, which is a merging of many lights. It is a shining forth from a central exalted point, which has been related to Lucifer. That angel is seen not as an underworld figure, but as the light bearer, the morning and evening star, usually considered the planet Venus, which is the mundane chakra of Netzach. Now pay close attention to that, because that's going to reveal some of those deeper questions about why these stories call them by what names. You remember, both Lucifer and Christ called themselves the morning star. Actually, Isaiah called Lucifer son of the morning, and that was it. Christ called himself the morning star, according to John and Revelation, the bright and morning star. So here, the Elohim, Netzach, this sphere, corresponds to Venus, and the angel Lucifer, and here, Tifereth, the bright and morning star of the sun, corresponds to Christ. Right? And here is the path on the intuitive, emotional side of the personality making its first handshake with the higher self. Hope this is starting to come together. Now, before we get into Crowley's card, I'd like to take a look at Paul Foster Case's material on this case. Hello. Beautiful card, right? The third stage of unfoldment, the revelation, the name, the star, the key number 17, the Hebrew letter, Zadi. Paul Foster Case agrees this is Zadi. It also means the fish hook, the natural intelligence. The power aspect of our consciousness is our revelations, or the revelation of our consciousness. In astrology, it is ruled by Aquarius, and in newer astrology, Uranus. But the human faculty that resides here is meditation. The color is violet purple on that path. The sound, we already talked about the sound. What was it? A sharp, A flat, something, A something. Path on the tree, we already know where that is. But in the cube of space, it lies in the south above. And in alchemy, metallic alchemy, it is the dissolution process. So when we're turning lead into gold, this represents dissolution. Hello. Now, most of the time, you'll hear tarot readers, they'll just give you like, oh, this corresponds to Aquarius and a little bit of Pisces too, or whatever, Uranus, Saturn. They might say those things. You don't hear a lot of stuff about the tree, though. So Paul Foster Case says this is the third stage of spiritual unfoldment as represented by the tarot. This is revelation. And by revelation, we mean unveiling, disclosure, exposure, rather than discovery. This key 17, past 28, the tarot key 17, tells us of the operation of something above the personal level rather than the result of just our personal activities. The disclosures that are made at this stage are not perceived with the physical senses. They are not something arrived at by reasoning of the mind or intellect or from external observations. Quite the reverse. They are perceived only when the mind is completely stilled and the senses are sealed. The Hebrew letter Zadi, pronounced as written, means fish hook. A fish hook is a symbol of angling. Thus, it is related to our ideas of experimentation, quest, and research. It is a quest for that which is not yet definitely realized, a sort of groping into the void, a feeling one's way or fishing for something. Now, what is clearly indicated here is that the fish hook symbolizes some agency or instrumentality whereby one attempts to solve secrets or enigmas, whereby one follows a more or less faint trail leading to the solution of a mystery. This agency, symbolized by the fishhook, is meditation, which is the function attributed to Key 17, and Patanjali defines meditation as an unbroken flow of knowledge in a particular object, and we shall see that Key 17 carries out this definition to the letter. Meditation is close or continued thought. That's all it is, close or continued thought. It is very deep. It is a deep reflection. It is a continuous dwelling upon one central idea, a diving down into the depths of the mind, to the ideas associated with the main thought, where you fish or fishing for the truth, so to speak. So you will note that such association of ideas forms the basis of all of our tarot practice. This card, well, actually, you will find this carried out even further when you come to study more, if you get deeper into the Kabbalah and you start studying Kabbalistic correspondences. Keys 1, 2, and 3 symbolize the process extremely well. First, the selection of some definite object upon which attention is focused. That's key 1. Then, the associative process represented by the meaning of the letter Gimel. That's key 2, which results in the fertile mental imagery, the true understanding represented by the Empress. Key 3. Now, the numerical value of the letter Zadi is actually 90. And this is also the value of the letter Mem, which is associated with key 12, the Hanged Man. And this indicates the probability of a cross correspondence between the two letters and the ideas represented by them. And this was an ancient kind of Hebrew, what do you call it? Gematria. What is that? It's a code. So things that carried the same numerical value would correspond to each other in some kind of way. It was a hidden secret. So such a correspondence is evident, even in the meanings of the letter names. For certainly a fishhook, Zadi, immediately makes us think of water, Mem, or the Hanged Man, right? So it is, in fact, an instrument for lifting the fish out of the water. You remember Christ talking about in I think it was a Gnostic text where he's talking about being fishers of men, or he actually put some real numbers to it. Cast your net to the right side, or I'll make you fishers of men, all that stuff. I'm getting all my books confused. It's late. But we know a fish hook, what it is, right? It's in fact an instrument for lifting fish out of water. So water, you'll remember, is the universal subconsciousness, the collective universal subconsciousness, the substance from which everything exists. Follow this idea for yourself for a little while. In connection with Key 12, you will recall that the title, The Hanged Man, is synonymous with the suspended mind, which signifies, among other things, the suspension of the activity of personal consciousness as the result of profound meditation. This suspension in the Hanged Man is called samadhi in Sanskrit books on yoga, and is said in those books to lead to the revelation of the highest truths. And meditation, by keeping the stream of consciousness flowing in relation to some special object, we gather impression after impression from that object. As a consequence of this, our minds actually take the form of that object. We become more and more identified with it, and thus we become aware of the inner nature of the object, that it reveals itself to us. The object of meditation is usually a problem of some sort, and this problem is pretty important sometimes. So just as you must have the right kind of bait before any fish will bite, so you must have some definite object for meditation to put on that hook. The solution for the problems is the reason for the meditation, because it is a problem. It appears to be the adversary of the person engaged in meditation. So it may look like the very devil himself, but the practical occultist knows that this is but the first appearance of the problem, and thus he disregards it. He knows the solvent power of consciousness and how to apply it, so he doesn't let the devil scare him off. The first thing to do in meditation is to silence the superficial activity of the personal consciousness. Let it go. Just as the fisherman sits quietly for the fish, so must the man in meditation learn to wait patiently until the fish of thought takes the hook. The hook is always a specific question in this story, and those who imagine that they are meditating when they sit passively, imitating a jellyfish in their mental attitude, are sadly mistaken. Yeah, so some people think that, well, I'm just going to sit here and be passive and I'm meditating. For although it is true that we do not discover truth, it is also true that our mental attitude must be one of an active quest. Otherwise, why are we in a body? So we must not be content merely to sit still in the hope of enlightenment, but still we must be. But at the same time, intent upon receiving light upon our problem. The right mental attitude is one of quiet but alert receptivity. In this attitude, we're able to hear the voice of the Hierophant, and he will speak distinctly and very definitely. As we become skilled in the practice of meditation, we find that about all we have to do with the disclosure of new aspects of truth is the preliminary work of selecting some specific problem as the pivot of our meditation. In ancient Egypt, there used to be a statue of Isis with an inscription beneath it, asserting that no mortal had ever lifted her veil. But this continues to be true, yet the veil of Isis is lifted again and again for those who are duly and truly prepared to look upon her lovely presence. Man does not lift her veil, she lifts it herself. Neither does nature deliberately hide herself from us. The veil that conceals truth is the veil of human ignorance, and that veil may be removed by the practice of meditation. Hello. The number 17 that corresponds with this key is composed of the digits 7 and 1, where 7 represents the power that is expressed, and the 1, the agency through which it's manifested. 7 refers in tarot to the chariot, and consequently to the receptivity which is indispensable in meditation. To succeed in meditation, we must be keenly aware that the personality is the vehicle of life power, and we must understand that the life power, being the logos, or creative speech, finds expression in all forms. Yeah, I just had a weird thought. Anyways, it is because that word is actually seated in our hearts that we are able to receive its disclosures of truth. The mental attitude, which is symbolized in tarot by the magician, is the means whereby the truth so disclosed may be put into practical application. Man is, by his nature, the transformer of his environment in accordance with his perceptions of reality. He is that. Whether he applies his power wisely or unwisely doesn't matter. It just is. He is that. We are the magicians, projecting our own circumstances by our own mental imageries. We are creating our realities. When we realize this truth about ourselves and act upon it, we shall understand the true significance of that old saying of Francis Rebellious, "Do what thou wilt." Now, the zodiacal sign Aquarius, the water bearer, is attributed to this key. Its symbol is the same as the alchemical symbol for dissolution, and thus it is directly connected with the ideas which we have considered in our study of key 13. It is apparent that this key is closely related to key 17, since the letter Nun means fish. In the symbolic representation of the fixed signs of the zodiac, in the corners of keys 10 and 21, Aquarius is the man. Man is the great fisher for new forms of truth. Man is the possessor of that universal solvent, the power of human consciousness, of which we read in alchemical books. It is the most potent force at our disposal, in the solution of our problems, that is. Meditation is the process whereby this is accomplished. Aquarius is jointly ruled by Uranus and Saturn. These two are the first and last keys of the Tarot Major trumps, the Fool and the World. This is a sufficient hint that the practice of meditation will eventually bring about answers to every question, from the most abstract to the most concrete. There are many other interesting ideas arising out of this co-rulership. Maybe you should meditate upon them to find out. But the title, the star, refers directly to the universal light energy which condenses itself into stars, the reality behind their forms. And meditation is the intentional, skilled direction of the spiraling force of this energy in its course through the nervous system and the brain. The great star is the blazing star of Masonic symbolism. It is the symbol of the quintessence, or the fifth essence of the alchemist. And this is clearly indicated by the fact that it has 8 principal rays. The 8-spoked wheel seen on the dress of the Fool and the 8-pointed star are the symbols of the same quintessence. It is the symbol of spirit, of the energy which is transmitted by the sun. It also has 8 very short secondary rays, and these rays are shown fully developed in key 19. So now you can see how all this stuff starts running together. So after you study one card at a time, which we're doing now, then you'll start seeing the story play out. So the 7 lesser stars are also the 8-pointed star, or the 7 lesser stars are also 8-pointed to show that they are manifestations of the same quintessence. They also represent the 7 alchemical metals: lead, iron, tin, gold, copper, silver, and mercury. And we know in alchemy that these correspond to the 7 planets: Saturn, Mars, Jupiter, Sun, Venus, Moon, and Mercury. They are the symbols of the 7 interior stars, or chakras, which are centers through which the force operates in the human body, that old Kundalini force we were talking about earlier. Now, this is a forerunner of the teaching that you will receive later. So he's hinting you're going to learn some secret stuff later. Then you will be told much more about these centers and will learn much about their development. For the present, this is not a necessary part of your instruction, but I'm just going to tease you with it, though. Much teaching, damn, it's getting late, is extant with regard to the development of these centers. A great deal of this is very dangerous because it either teaches those who are not duly and truly prepared the secrets of how much development may be brought about, thus wrecking the unfortunate individual who practices such instruction in much the same manner that a high-powered electric current would do, or else it teaches wrong methods of development which force development, and then the result is the same as that of forcing open a bud before it's ready. Be very wary of practices in this direction unless you are sufficiently advanced to be able to discriminate and know what the hell you're doing and what you're about. Now, the nude woman in this card is Isis Urania. She represents truth, and the practice of meditation reveals truth to us without disguise. That's why she's nude. Nothing to hide. Her legs are bent so that each forms an angle of 90 degrees. The number of the letter Zadi. The weight of her body rests upon her left knee and is supported by the earth, representing the facts of physical existence. She maintains her balance with her right leg, and her right foot rests upon the surface of the waters of the pool. This implies that in meditation, something occurs which gives solidity and supporting power to the ordinarily unstable mind stuff symbolized by the water. This is what the alchemists call the fixation of the volatile. The 2 vases are the 2 personal modes of consciousness, self-consciousness and subconsciousness. The ellipses on their side symbolize the 0 sign, spirit, or akasha. Only 2 ellipses are shown, but there are really 4, signifying the expression of spirit and the 4 elements. From the vase in the right hand of the woman, a stream falls, which sets up a wave motion in the pool and represents the activity of subconsciousness set up by meditation. From the other vase, a stream falls on land and divides into 5 parts to represent the perfection of the 5 senses in meditation. Damn, it's getting deep. Look at that. This is Paul Foster Case's card, though. And the mountain in the background is the same as the one in the 6th and the 8th keys. It represents the perfection of the great work. Anytime you see that mountain, remember that's what that means, which is the control of the inorganic forms of the life powers activity, or the mineral work in alchemy. The tree represents the human organism and especially the nervous system and brain. The bird is an ibis, which is a fishing bird. And the Egyptians associated the ibis with Hermes or Mercury. Same thing in Wang's card, except he just had the bird there, all right, the white bird. So this, so Paul Foster Case says this: for 1 week, develop the exercise that you began last week. Formulate your desires into specific problems and give them your complete attention in your meditation. Focus the spotlight of your consciousness upon them. Make every detail clear and definite. Then, with that as a basis, begin the fishing process of meditation. Throw that hook out. Do not try to think about your problem. Rather, let the stream of consciousness flow past you. Observe carefully all the ideas that develop in connection with the object of your meditation. Make every effort to keep on the subject and focus. Keep your object always in view. And if you have any very strong impulses, act upon them. Have faith in the consequences of your activity, and above all, expect to get results. Yet do not be discouraged if you do not get them immediately. Only persistent practice can you learn the art of meditation. Only by persistent practice. So every minute you spend with it will repay you 1,000-fold in practical results. The secret of Key 17 is found in the quotations from the Meditation on Zadi in the Book of Tokens by Paul Foster Case. And it goes like this, quote, "Thinkest thou, O seeker, for wisdom that thou bringest thyself into the light by thine own search?" Actually, I said that like a statement, but it's actually a question. Thinkest thou, O seeker, for wisdom that thou bringest thyself into the light by thine own search? Do you think you got here on your own? Not so. I am the hook, cast into the waters of darkness to bring men from their depths to the sphere of true perception. Entering that sphere, they must die to their old selves, even as fish cast upon the land must die. Yet do they die only to live again. And what before seemed life to them now weareth the aspect of death. Men think they seek me, but it is I who seek them. No other seeker is there anywhere than myself. And when I find mine own, the pain of questioning is at an end. The fish graspeth the hook, thinking to find food, but the fisherman isn't the enjoyer of the meal. It makes it sound like when you surrender to your higher self, you're just getting ate up by your higher self. But you get it now, right? Hopefully. So when we get into Crowley's card, now Crowley's card, obviously, this is one of the things like that I didn't want to show you Crowley's card on, because even though I'm going to, because he switched a couple of the path letters. But here are the colors of the path in the 4 worlds, which Lon Melo Duquette will reveal. It's not just violet. It's all these colors. Just depends on which world you're in, meditating upon, working with, etc. So, and let's pull up Crowley's card. He has a whole different philosophy to his star card here. Not totally different, but pretty different. So the figure of... And this card is Saturn rules, Neptune exalted, the zodiacal trump of Aquarius, the dweller between the waters, the daughter of the firmament, the figure of a water nymph disporting herself. A woman naked and kneeling on her left knee pours from a vase in her right hand silver waters into a river by which grow roses. the haunts of colored butterflies. With her left hand, she pours golden waters over her head, which are lost in her long hair, and her attitude suggests the swastika. Above flames a great star of 7 rays. Her attitude suggests the swastika. You don't really see it, but you can kind of see what he's talking about there. So Crowley says it's not Zadi, but the letter Hey, which means window. The Tree of Life path, 15, joining Chokma wisdom to Tifereth and beauty. So he switched them. He switched the emperor, I think. He moved stuff around. The colors violet, sky, blue, bluish. What is that? Mauve, white, and tinged purple. So this is what, here's a quote. Pour water on thyself, thus shalt thou be a fountain to the universe. Find thou thyself in every star. Achieve thou every possibility. So Freda Harris wrote this to Crowley after she finished painting this card or making it. I think looking at the finished cards, you will remember all the sequences you have forgotten, and I shall be crushed by alterations which will confuse the structural design in any spectator without your knowledge. And so suffer little children to come unto thee, and confuse them not by too much symbolism, and stay thy hand from poor Freda's tormented vision. That's funny. She's like kind of like laughing at herself because there's too much symbolism in there. So drawing from the imagery found in the Book of the Law, the star is one of the most intensely thelemic cards in the deck. Remember, guys, Thelema is a religion. Love is the law, love under will. To truly appreciate its secrets, one must be familiar with the contents of that chapter in the first chapter of the Book of the Law, and cognizant of its possible meanings. The central subject is Nuit herself, and here she is not pictured as the infinite arc of the night sky, as we see her on the Stellium 220, the Aeon, but tangibly personified as a beautiful goddess here. The 3 7-pointed stars that populate this card are versions of the Star of Babylon, and reveal to us, if we hadn't already figured it out, that Nuit and Babylon are, to Crowley, 2 aspects of the same goddess. Babylon, he tells us, is yet a further materialization of the original idea of Nuit, and she is the Scarlet Woman, the sacred harlot who is the lady of a 211. He also refers to the 7-pointed star as the Star of Venus, which we know corresponds to Netzach, right? As if declaring the principal characteristics of her nature to be love. The abode of Babylon, or Nuit, on the Tree of Life is the 3rd Sephirah of Bina, the supernal mother, and the great name Yod-He-Vav-He, the mother, is the first He, and it makes perfect sense to attribute He to this trump, which represents the sublime image of the goddess of infinite space. The Harris star is very faithful to the original description. She even includes the roses and butterflies in the lower right corner that are absent in more traditional decks. The river, which is a bit harder to see, flows at the bottom of the card and is demarcated by hills on the distant shore. And perhaps the most exciting departure from the traditional versions of the star card is the huge celestial globe that dominates this card. The globe is often mistakenly identified as the Earth. But if it were the Earth, it would dramatically diminish the spiritual and cosmic scale of this card. Actually, the celestial globe represents the entire heavens surrounding the Earth. Therefore, all other images on this card are placed outside of the celestial sphere. Those things must represent spiritual environments that transcend even the concept of infinite space. Crowley's cards are so dramatic sometimes, aren't they? The largest and smallest of the 3 stars are found outside the celestial sphere. The former spins counterclockwise like a cosmic pinwheel in the upper left corner of the card, and the latter tumbles clockwise like a tiny star seed from the golden bowl in the goddess's right hand. The 3rd star whirls counterclockwise on the celestial sphere itself. The 2 cups in her hands, Crowley writes, are fashioned as breasts, as it is written, the milk of the stars from her paps, yea, the milk of the stars from her paps. More drama from Crowley. And from the golden cup, he continues, she pours this ethereal water, which is also milk and oil and blood, upon her own head, indicating the eternal renewal of the categories, the inexhaustible possibilities of existence. Crowley completes the description thus. The left hand holds a silver cup, from which also she pours the immortal liquor of her life. This liquor is the Amrita of the Indian philosophers, the Nepenthe of the Ambrosia of the Greeks, the Occult and the universal medicine of the alchemists, the blood of the Grail, or rather, the nectar which is the mother of that blood. Now, traditionally, the star is the card of hope, the promise of things unseen. But what is the hope that Nuit here offers us? What is the promise of our star goddess? Lon Maladuquette says, I wish I could simply reprint the entire first chapter of the Book of the Law and show you, but this short excerpt might give you some idea. Here it is. Quote, I give you unimaginable joys on earth, certainly not faith, while in life upon death, peace unutterable, rest, ecstasy, nor do I demand aught in sacrifice. Da, da, da. What do you think that represents? Remember, Crowley's cards are thelemic. So his whole teaching was about the uniting of the sexual energies. Fractally, is that even a word? Fractally, I say, represented by the left and right brain, the masculine, the feminine, the actual male and female, the sexual union of the two, and then on a higher spiritual level, the marriage between the higher self, the feminine, right? And the active living force of our physical bodies, the masculine, and those two things marrying together, which is represented in some, I guess you could say rituals and ceremonies by sexual things. But it is what it is. We all know that Crowley focused on that part of the teachings more than anything because, in fact, if you listen carefully to what we just went over, Paul Foster Case indicated things that it's too dangerous to talk about now and stuff like that. Because the secret of this big alchemical secret that I'm sure you figured out is the energies that we grow in our bodies through these sexual forces and the unities of them, right? That energy is supposed to flow through a purified vessel to grow us, and to connect to our higher selves, and to connect to a higher love. Do you think most of us have done the work to purify ourselves while we're doing all this stuff? I don't know. Don't know. This is why I study everything, including this system. But I happen to like, in my opinion, is the teachings of Case's card. I like the symbolism of Wang's card, but the actual teachings of Paul Foster Case and what he teaches about the star, in my opinion, is the most revealing and probably the most effective. So, long story short, we talked about how this represents the union of the higher self to the personality, the first handshake of that. Also how it corresponds with other cards and these deeper kind of esoteric intricacies where they correspond together, and the gematria secrets of it, all kinds of secrets that connect to other things with this card. But when you first look at this card and you see the star, there's a lot of intuitive things that get revealed too. And in the end, it is really the higher self trying to come in contact with the lower self. And I guess what I would do is, after, if you're interested in, I guess, practically studying this stuff, maybe do what Kay said. Maybe this time when you meditate, in fact, take the star card out, meditate upon it, and then meditate upon anything after that. It can be this card again, and really actively meditate, but try to let go at the same time and just let the messages come in while you focus, which is what? Think about what they're saying. We do the same thing in a fractal way, but we do the same thing in hemisync. We let go and surrender as we relax. We focus on a voice as the two frequencies go into both hemispheres. And for some reason, we can get in higher conscious states when there is that unity of those two forces. That balance, right? All right. I told you this one was going to be deep, but whatever. I mean, it was on the emotional, intuitive side, so it was meant to be deep and weird and stuff like that. It's a mystical. This is a truly mystical card, if you ask me. Right here. The emotional, intuitive, deep side of us. Boom. I love you guys. Hope you enjoyed it. It's super late. I'm sorry I bumbled on this one so much, but we must press on to the next path. Night night.